If you're a property developer and you're not up to speed with sustainability, you are in for a shock over the next couple of years. Massive changes to Part L, massive changes to Part F, and they are going to cost you a lot of money if you don't understand them. And you're also going to miss out on a lot of opportunity going forward. So this video really is about explaining what the changes are, how they're going to affect you, and what you need to do to keep on top of your development.
I just want to start by understanding from the room what people think sustainability means. I mean, shout out a few things. I mean, I'd love to hear from you. I'll start you off, and a lot of you probably think it's tree-hugging hippies, eco-warriors out there looking to change the world. Anyone else care to recycle? Okay, good. Reuse. Carbon neutral, some good buzzwords. Anything else? Long-term vision, excellent. Good stuff. So I want to look at the definition, really. And in the Oxford Dictionary, this is actually the first one. So it's essentially the quality of being able to continue over a period of time. So no mention of green, no mention of environment in there at all. The one that you're probably most familiar with is this: the quality of causing little or no damage to the environment and therefore able to continue for a long time. So for me, I think that these two are intrinsically linked. If you aren't getting to grips with environmentally friendly materials, with carbon emissions, with all of these buzzwords that we've just thought about, I don't think that you will have a long-term sustainable property business, because times are changing, and hopefully I'm going to enlighten you on some of those changes so that you can be well prepared going forward. So just a little bit about us. We're a team of architects and designers based in Clapham. We work all over London and just outside the M25. And predominantly the benefits of using us as an architectural practice is that we've either worked in-house for property developers as in-house architects. We develop and invest ourselves outside of the office in development, so we understand the developer mindset. We design beautiful buildings, but we also understand the commercial aspects of things as well. So if you've got a project to discuss, come and have a chat. And these are the types of things we do. So we don't just do developments. We will work with homeowners looking to extend and transform their houses. We work with self-builders. So if they've got a plot and they want to build their next grand design, we'd happily speak to them about that. Property developers, all of you in the room fall into this category. Generally, we work up to sort of about 20 units. We've got a 24-unit scheme in Croydon at the moment that has only become 24 units because we've added so much value to the site. And we work with property investors. So if you're looking to maximise your rental yields from HMOs, then come and have a chat. So who am I, and what gives me the right to stand up here and talk about sustainability? So I graduated 10 years ago. My degree was actually in architectural engineering, so I'm kind of a crossbreed between an architect and a structural engineer. And in my early days, I was working on a lot of small property developments where things like the Code for Sustainable Homes was big in force, so Code 4, Code 5, Code 6. Anyone heard of Code for Sustainable Homes? Yeah, a few of you. So that was, when I came out of uni, that was the big thing. I then went on to work for the Berkeley Group on some larger schemes in Battersea and Nine Elms, was a technical manager there. And since then, I've started Aura Architecture and also EXP Property Investments, which is my development company, which I co-own with Jack Jiggins, who's going to be speaking later. So within my time at the Berkeley Group, I became a BREEAM accredited professional. So essentially that helped me become sustainability champion for our development and take a lead from the Berkeley Group. They've been around for a long, long time. They've been around for over 40 years. Sustainability is at the heart of what they do, and there's a reason for that. So they have sustainability champions on each project. They have sustainability managers that come around and oversee and make sure that we're doing what we can do to make sure that we're ticking all the boxes in terms of BREEAM assessments and all the other criteria that we need to hit. So for those of you who don't know what BREEAM is, it's an assessment of an asset's environmental, social, and economic sustainability performance. So BRE is the big research and development facility up in Watford. Essentially, a lot of the papers that you read about sustainability and the tests that are carried out are run by these guys. The BREEAM assessments that I carried out, the Code for Sustainable Homes, projects that I worked on helped me to essentially be in the trenches on site, seeing how these regulations affect developments from the ground up. So how is it measured? Up to this point, we've been measured by a plethora of different things. The code, which we just spoke about, BREEAM assessments, Home Quality Mark, which isn't actually a government initiative, but it's essentially something you can choose to do to show how your houses are a step above the rest. It's a bit of a marketing ploy. Lifetime homes, which I'm extremely passionate about. I think this type of certification and process is great. You're essentially looking at the lifetime performance of your house, specifically looking at maybe the energy standards and how the house operates now. It's looking forward and looking at ways in which it caters for the elderly. Maybe there's ways in which you can turn downstairs WCs into shower rooms potentially down the line, so that the generations that live in that house, the house is capable of adapting to that. So I think that's great. 19% reduction in energy emissions. Who's seen that on their planning conditions? Quite a few of you, yeah. So that figure's going to go up, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But that's essentially how the council in certain locations, they don't bring this out everywhere. We've just done a 2-unit scheme in Merton where they've asked for a house conversion into 2 flats, and they wanted a 19% reduction in energy emissions. So that involves running SAP assessments. And for those of you who don't understand SAP assessments, they're essentially a rudimental way of getting the EPC certificate, which is a legal requirement that you'd need. So I've worked pretty much in all of these types of assessments, and I'm just going to run through the key 9 elements that essentially you'll need to look at in order to create a sustainable product. And they generally all follow these types of key aspects. So we're looking at management. So are you using responsible construction processes? Are you registered with things like the Considerate Constructor Scheme? Are you looking at the design brief from the start and actually talking to all of your consultants and making everyone aware of the direction that you're going in? It's things as simple as that. It's looking at commissioning on the services and looking at actually the life cycle cost of your development. Looking forward, you might choose a more expensive product, but you know it's going to last for a longer term, and therefore actually the life cycle cost of that product is probably less than what the expenditure is at the front. Health and well-being, which Nicola's going to have a chat about after in more depth, but with this you're looking at things like the air quality in your house. You're looking at the acoustics. I live in a 1920s ground floor flat in Tooting, and the guy above me has the loudest burp I've ever heard in my life. And that wouldn't happen nowadays. You know, we have regulations between flats we need to hit in terms of acoustic transfer. So also looking at things like thermal comfort, and Nicola will explain a little bit more about that in terms of the interior design. So there she is. Energy, this is the biggest one. Most people, when I say sustainability, will think about green technologies, fabric efficiencies, and stuff like that. And I'll move on to more about that a bit later. But that's one of 9 criteria that you will need to look at in order to create sustainable products. Land use and ecology, is it brownfield, is it greenfield? Can we look at the biodiversity of the site by adding things like back boxes on roofs? That was a tick on the projects I was working on with the Berkeley group. Great, easy. Looking at green roofs and improving the biodiversity of the site.
Hi, it's Ben Richards here from Aura Architecture. We help homeowners create fantastic living spaces in London and the home counties, and we also work with lots of property developers to help create maximum value from their sites and make sure that they're optimizing and getting a best return on investment. If you found this video useful, why not click the subscribe button and click the notification bell to make sure that you're notified as and when we upload new content.
A tip for you, contaminated land. You can get 150% land tax relief on the amount spent remediating sites. So that's really useful. If you aren't aware of that and you discount a potential property development opportunity because it doesn't quite stack up, that's actually something that could bring it into the margins that you're looking to achieve. Transport, we spoke about it earlier. PTAL ratings, are we close to bus links and good transport links to get us around? Are we looking at the cycle storage requirements on site? Are we actually providing a car-free development, which more and more councils in London specifically are looking at? Water, are we looking at water leaks, leak detection? Are we looking at flow restrictors, water efficiency measures? Materials, is it FCS sourced, responsibly sourced? Are we looking at the lifetime, the resilience of the material? Are you going to have to change it in 10 years because actually it's broken and it's no good? So is it worth putting a high quality product in place from day one? Waste, are we separating our stuff in landfill? Are we separating our plasterboards on site? That's down to the contractor. And pollution, are we stopping our construction waste polluting the rainwater and the surface water, etc.? So there's a lot of things to think about if you want to create a sustainable product. And a lot of people think it's just the energy side of things that we need to be aware of. And that is a big one. That is a big part of this, but there are other elements to it as well. And I'm going to touch now on, that's historically what we've had to look at from a design perspective, from a development perspective. There are changes that are about to happen that will change the way that we develop, for the better, I think, but you need to be aware of it as the developer. Don't bury your head in the sand, because it is going to affect you massively, and it is this. Who's heard of this? The Future Home Standard. Good. Good to see about a third of hands going up, because you need to be aware of this. They're consulting on this at the moment. It's essentially changes to Part L, energy, of the building regs, and Part F, the ventilation side of building regulations. And there's two options being considered. It's either 20% reduction in carbon emissions is what they're looking at, or 31% reduction in carbon emissions. And they're swaying more towards the 31%. It's next month that the consultation ends, and you'll start to see a lot more of this. They're trying to bring this in by 2025. So that's only 5 years to get your head around these changes, which are massive, really. And I'm going to explain why they're doing this and give you a few interesting figures to see how this compares to kind of where we've got to today compared to where they expect us to be by 2025. So the reason they're bringing this in is because the UK have set a target in 2050 to be net zero carbon. And that is no mean feat. Strap in, because it is going to be a very, very difficult next 5 years when they bring these regulations in for developers. So I just want to look at where we've come from over the last 10 years and give you a few figures that they have brought out to see, how well we are doing and where we've come from in the last 10 years. In 2010, there were 972 electric vehicles registered. Not a lot. 2018, we don't have the latest last year's figures. I'd imagine they're probably double than this. But in 2018, there were over 15,000 electric cars registered, which is absolutely brilliant. Who's got an electric car? Just the two. Who's got a Tesla? Show off. Brilliant. So in 2010, only 6.9% of electricity was from renewables. 33% now is actually from renewable energies, which is a great step in the right direction. 24% in 2000. So in 20 years, we reduced greenhouse gas emissions by only 24% in 20 years, which is staggering. We've picked up a little bit more. So the past 30 years, we've increased that to 44%. And just some stats about the UK average household, and we have dropped by over 30% basically over the last 10 years. But what I want to focus on out of these figures is this one. Remember I mentioned earlier about the 31% improvement. So it's taken us 30 years to get to a point we've made a 44% reduction. In the next 5 years, the government want us to be 31% more than today's levels. Today's levels are actually still quite tough to achieve. You've still got high levels of thermal efficiency. You've got to look at really tight air tightness levels. You've got to put renewable technologies into your developments as well. So today, it's pretty tough to achieve, and they want us to go an extra 31% on top of that in the next 5 years. So we're looking at triple glazing, heat pumps, really high fabric efficiency, thermal fabric efficiencies, and that's only going to be to you as the developer an added cost. You're going to be needing to buy more materials. You've got thicker walls, thicker levels of insulation. Material costs, as we mentioned earlier, are likely to increase. So to you as a cost, to you as the developer, be prepared for this, because it is going to increase significantly. So who's really responsible for this? As the designer, as the engineer, as the architect, as the M&E consultant, we have a certain degree of responsibility, and we'll help lead that, and we are the experts in those types of fields. So you'll need to rely on us to some degree. Is it these guys? God forbid. these, contractors, builders have a massive part to play in this, because as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things that you need for a sustainable development is management. And that goes from the cleaner on site all the way through to your project director. Everyone needs to chip in to achieve the targets that we need to hit. And also you'll need energy consultants. If you don't have an energy consultant that you can work closely with at the moment, get one, because in the next 5 years you're going to need their input. But ultimately, although it takes a team of consultants, of designers to create your schemes, the responsibility is yours. You're the ones with the purse strings. You're the ones that are going to be leading the charge and showing your consultants the vision. And you're the ones who are selling the units. And if you haven't ticked all the boxes that you need to in terms of sustainability, you're unlikely to get a mortgage, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So what are the benefits to your customers? These are quite obvious. It's lower utility bills, better control on heating systems, less maintenance because everything's been built more durably. They get a sense of responsibility, buying an eco house with the changing mindsets that we've already discussed today is becoming more and more prevalent. Better health, better air quality, which I'm sure we'll hear more about later. And essentially, you're building a better quality product. Now, the benefits to the developer are actually a lot harder to think of. If you've got a big PRS scheme, if you've got big commercial spaces which you're holding in terms of freehold, great, you'll get lower facility costs. You'll probably have the same sense of responsibility if you're that way inclined, and I'd implore you to think more sustainability with your developments for the reasons that I'm discussing. Higher GDV. Now, I put a question mark here because actually I've read some studies that state that it doesn't make a difference. But if I were buying a house with a heating system that cost me 60% less than the next house, for the same price, I'm going to go for that one. So I do think that it will increase not just the GDV, but actually the saleability of your units. And this one's important. If you are creating big schemes, is there a way of selling back the extra power that you've created to the grid as an extra income stream? The final one is really what I'd want you to take away from this, and it's kind of not a benefit, but if you don't do it, you're going to be in all sorts of trouble, and it's compliance. So you will be forced to comply with planning stipulations, with building control, and unless you get to grips with it very fast, you're going to get left behind, and you cannot wait to the end of a project. And I hear this too often from developers. It's okay, we'll stick some PVs on the roof. I hear that way too often, and by that point, you're too late. You need to think about the whole building from start to finish, the design team, the foundations, the walls, the roof, all the way up through, even the systems that you install, ventilation, control systems. It's no good waiting to the end. So I'm going to touch now on sort of how you actually achieve this in practice. And again, one of the key things that I think you should take away is what the Greater London Authority kind of help us with, and it's this nice diagram. It's be lean, be clean, and then be green. And essentially that is the fabric first approach that you should be taking to your developments. And what I mean by that in the be lean side of things is that you do think about your fabric first. You're thinking about U values, you're thinking about the thermal resistance of the materials that you're using. You're thinking about how thick the insulation levels are. You're also thinking about, can we use less energy by using things like heat recovery? So you're using less heat energy because you're actually recycling some of the heat that you're creating from your showers and your bathrooms. And then it's using home controls that efficiently know when you're in and out the house, so you don't waste heat by having the heating on when you're not there, turning lights off automatically when you're not using the space, and just having systems in place that use less energy throughout the house. Then it's looking at how clean you're supplying that energy. So are you supplying it with a highly efficient boiler for smaller properties? Are you, for the bigger schemes, looking at things like combined heat and power, CHP? We used a lot of those with our big Berkeley schemes. Or is it using things like ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps to essentially take one unit of energy and create 3 or 4 units of electricity out the back end, which is what these systems do. After that, everyone knows what these are, PVs, using renewable energy. So using photovoltaics, using solar water panels, using wind energy, and the likes. And the final point is offsetting. So can you get to a point on your development where you are offsetting the electricity, for example, that you're creating back to the grid and getting paid for that as a secondary source of income? So that's kind of me. I hope that I've kind of got across to you that times are changing, and unless you are aware of these changes and work with the right people that understand them and can help you get through them, you are going to get left behind. And as I mentioned in my very first slide, I believe that the long-term sustainability of your property business as a whole depends on how fast you can get to grips with this, and how quickly you can adapt to the changes that are happening, and what are you going to do about it? Thank you very much.
If you found this video useful, why not click the subscribe button and click the notification bell to make sure that you're notified as and when we upload new content.